staggeringly meritocratically based. And that started more or less in World War I, when the US military started to use tests of general cognitive ability to select for officer training. And the American military were pioneers in meritocratic assessment for decades. They did a lot of the basic research on general cognitive ability, and they were strictly meritocratic. And there's some really cool things about that, because one of the things it meant, so Black Americans are disproportionately likely to serve in the armed forces as well, which is quite interesting. And so the US has set up its military system not only to be available in wartime, but also to be a means of social progress in peacetime. And that's been part of explicit policy. And so the military was very good at finding kids who had some ability, especially on the officer front, and who had some competence and some diligence, and then subjecting them to a meritocratic evaluation and training process, and moving them up the socioeconomic hierarchy. And so it's quite remarkable to see that. And I know a lot of military people, and especially at the higher ends of the performance spectrum, they're a very singular type of person. I mean, one guy I know, for example, a Texas Ranger, I talked to him about when he decided he wanted to be a Texas Ranger, and he said he was like 5 years old, when he knew he wanted to do something that was military and specialized. And he was one of these people who, he was only interested in training if it was almost impossible, insanely rigorous, and strictly meritocratic. It's actually what he was looking for, right? And so one of the problems with producing, let's say, a military apparatus where you dispense with meritocracy is you cease to attract the very people who you absolutely want to attract, right? Who are unbelievably ambitious with regards to stringent attainment. That's especially true for the special forces. And so you can imagine that you just decimate the military by excluding the very people who would be likely to thrive temperamentally and practically. It's a real catastrophe. And so...
And you've lost... The Reagan Foundation just did a poll last year, and traditionally 75% of Americans had polled they had great confidence in the military. Now it's 45%. And the same is true when we see this weaponization. I don't need to get into that big topic of the FBI, the CIA. We're starting to see that these institutions that we all revered, especially on the conservative side, they've completely lost all of their conservative traditional support, and they become almost Stasi-like in they've been weaponized. And I feel like, so we're starting to see in the private and the public sector, everything that worked and made the United States singular and exceptional, suddenly, I mean, we can chart the genesis of it, goes way back decades, but suddenly it's accelerated to such a point. And whether we're talking about district attorneys in Chicago or Baltimore or San Francisco or Los Angeles letting criminals out the day that they commit a violent offense, we're starting to see society unwind. And what we don't realize is this happens a lot in Rome. There was no reason why the Western Empire had to fall in the late 5th century in the way that the Byzantine eastern half survived for 1,000 years. But once you lose confidence in these institutions, and once they're no longer meritocratic, and once people's primary allegiance is not any longer to the state, everything we've talked about this morning, then the end result is an implosion very quickly. And I think we haven't, I think...
Well, this is a real conundrum for conservatives. Maybe we can start to talk about Mr. Trump here a little bit because of this. So here's the dilemma that I see with regards to conservatives, especially on the populist front. And so Trump was very good at speaking to disaffected working class Americans. And certainly the Democrats abandoned them completely in the Clinton campaign, and had been preparing to do that for years, like the idiot champagne socialists have at the universities. But in any case, Trump was pretty good at talking to working class Americans. But here's the danger, as far as I'm concerned, on the classically conservative front. And I don't really know what to do about this. It's like the radical leftists have this fundamental proposition, which is all institutions are corrupt and predicated on dominance and power. And so that's kind of their leitmotif. But now, you have people like Trump who come in as outsiders and say, on the populist front, hey, everyone on the right, on the conservative side, the working class side, let's say now, all your institutions are corrupt and basically predicated on dominance and power. And I think, well, this is a big problem because the Conservatives are objecting to the corruption of the institutions in the manner that you just described. They're captured by the woke ideology. But the underlying message to people is kind of the same, which is our fundamental institutions can no longer be trusted. And the problem with beating that drum on the Conservative side, as far as I can tell, is that you add fuel to the fire on the left side. And so then you're in the position, and we can talk about the role of the humanities and education there, you're in the position of asking yourself, well, if you are a conservative and you're traditionally based, but you believe that the institutions have been corrupt, how the hell can you plot a pathway forward without falling prey to exaggeration of exactly the concerns that the radical leftists are putting forward? Because they say the same thing. The institutions can't be trusted. It's like the spirit of the institutions can be trusted.
I would maybe differ just in two regards. One is, I think they used to say the institutions can't be trusted, but it was the left that egged on the Russian collusion hoax, the laptop hoax, the Ping and the Alpha Bank hoax. And it was the left who said that James Clapper, who lied under oath once, and John Brennan, who lied under oath twice, and James Comey, who feigned amnesia 245 times under oath, and Andrew McCabe, who lied 4 times under oath, and Anthony Fauci, whose latest interrogatory was just a mishmash. If I can't remember, I don't recall. So, and they are all iconic in the left. So the left has basically said, these institutions got so unwieldy, and 2 million people working for the federal government, and the regulators who were not elected alone had the expertise of this huge Byzantine complex, because elected officials come and go, but the EPA guy is always there, and he knows every judge, jury, executioner, legislative, judicial, executive power, all in one person mode of operating. That the Conservatives said, we've got to break this up. We've got to take the FBI office and put it in Kansas City. We've got to cut 10% of the workforce. We've got to make sure that HHS, it shouldn't even be in Washington. We've got to get rid of the Department of Energy. I remember Mr. Perry, the Texas governor, said, I'm going to get rid of 3 agencies. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember which ones they were on the debate stage. But that's what conservatives were doing. But the left is saying, well, just as you have lost confidence because they're over-regulatory and they're intrusive and they are anti-constitutional,